All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Savannah, and I'm the producer of the Roxborough House Roundtables at Jefferson East Falls. Each episode is recorded and later posted on our YouTube and SoundCloud for those who were not able to make it to the live event. They are also aired on the first and third Sundays of each month from 8 to 9 a.m. on G-Town Radio 92.5 FM WGGT. For today's roundtable, Professor Evan Lane and I will be having an open discussion on comfort shows and other stress relievers. Since we are reaching the end of the semester, we thought we could use a little break from finals to talk about what we like to do to wind down at the end of the day. And before we begin, let's introduce everyone who's here today.
Hi, I'm Felicia.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Kavi.
I'm Steven.
All right, now I'll hand it over to Professor Lane.
All of us here have a certain love for certain shows. So what I'd like to do is just go around the table, and not just one, you could list a couple, just list the shows you like. And once we get that out, then I would like to discuss why do we keep on going back to these shows, binging shows that we can do dialogue from. Most of us can't probably do entire episodes of some of these shows, and then get into our best moments and our best shows. So why don't we start with Felicia?
I have a few. So I really like Dairy Girls, Queen's Gambit, and also Avatar: Last Airbender. I find myself watching that a lot as well.
Good choices. I would have to go back. I feel like The Office is such a classic, but I was there for the first run. I have never fully let it go since. That's my number one comfort show. Recently, though, I started with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is like a very similar sort of dynamic. So those, or Parks and Rec, those kind of shows that have a similar, vibe of ridiculousness.
I think Michael Shore is related to all three shows.
Oh, that makes sense.
I think he's the showrunner or assistant showrunner for all three.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Mine, The Office, number one. Seinfeld, number two, and one hasn't been mentioned, so Scrubs, which I'm really into, which would be three.
Well, as you guys said before, I love The Office. I'm obsessed with it. It's my number one. I also really like Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They have that same dynamic, and that sitcom feeling is just so comforting.
Alright, I'm not the biggest TV watcher, but probably my favorite shows I did watch were Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Oh,
that's good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Really good.
I'm not a huge TV watcher either, but my favorites are seasons 1 through 5 of SpongeBob. Anything after that is kind of like meh, but also RuPaul's Drag Race, to be honest, and Full House.
Full House is
Going
good.
old school.
That's a good one.
Sheldon, what are your favorite three shows?
Three.
Or movies, books.
Oh, movies and books.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't really watch a lot of TV, but I recently watched like all of Suits, which on brand.
Is Meghan Markle in that one? No. Which one was she in?
Is she not in Suits? Yeah, she's in Suits. Meghan Markle's in Suits.
There you go. I knew that much about it. I knew that much. Okay. So what about these shows, before we get into specific ones that we love? And so, Jess, why do you keep on going back to some episodes? What do they do for you?
I think there is a comfort in knowing that this is something I know I've enjoyed before. That it's low risk. There's no risk. I know I'm gonna put it on. I can, like you said, recite lines of it. I know I'm gonna laugh, and I always laugh at the same parts. I don't feel like it loses that ability to make me, feel silly. The shows in particular that I'm talking about are very silly. And I know that that's a consistent thing that I can expect. And I could give it my full attention if I want, but sometimes it'll just be on in the background while I'm doing other things that I don't want to be doing. And so I get that little, hit of dopamine of like the enjoyment while I'm doing another activity. And I think it's just knowing that it's the same every time. And there's a lot of comfort in the familiarity of the shows I love.
It's really good. Savannah?
I like to agree with you. It's the consistency. I know I like it. I know I'll laugh at it. It's going to be a good show. And also, like, in high school. High school wasn't a great time for me. I was going through it, and that show really helped me push through. Like, at the end of the day, I would just sit down, watch The Office, and relax, and I really haven't stopped since. Like, I'll go to sleep to The Office, and I can picture the scenes in my head. But,
It's funny what you say, because I'm so terrible at liking these things that I listen to the podcast, I listen to Office Ladies with my wife, and I listen to Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which is the Scrubs thing. And they say that all the time. They say people come up to them all the time and say, I got through a dark period or a difficult period in my life by watching these shows. And it's something, it's funny you said that, because it's constantly said to them. They say, what is the most thing that people say to you all the time? It's that. You got me through a divorce, you got me through an illness, you got me through a bad stretch, whatever it may be in my life. And what about these shows are giving us comfort? That's what I really want to know. Because do we all agree, whether it's funny or Breaking Bad for you, which by the way is great, okay, there's no question, Better Call Saul is great, and I'm going to question you later on which is better, so we'll get into that, okay? But what about it makes us just calm? It just calms us and gets us through difficult moments. So what do you think, Louise?
I think the more I rewatch it, the more like comforting it becomes. Like, I like a lot of the times I put on TV, like it's like a calming like background to things that I'm doing. Like, I think maybe that's why, because I'm always put on a show when I'm doing work as like a way to keep me like grounded. So maybe that's like a part of it. It keeps me like in like what I'm doing. If not, I'll get like super distracted. So it's nice like to have like something to keep me structured.
Yeah, you like form these relationships with these characters and the TV show in general, and they make it, like the show makes it seem like real life, so it's so relatable, and you're like, well, maybe life isn't so bad.
That's a good point, that you almost feel when you see you form a relationship, especially with The Office. And they're really not, if you really want to take them apart, they're pretty despicable. They're really terrible
They
people.
do them bad things.
You know, even Jim and Pam have their moments, okay? But it's something about the community that you're involved in with them. And you know, even with their foibles, that there's a genuine love that they have for each other, or friendship. What do you think of that? What do you think, Holly?
I think that I've seen many video essays on SpongeBob, and I think that like it's one of those shows where when you're watching it, it's obviously very silly and like unserious, but I guess when you peel back the layers, there is like a humanistic quality to each of the characters, even though they're like, you know, starfish and sponges and stuff. Because one of them, you know, the magnum opus of video essays on SpongeBob is about how, when you watch it when you're little, you feel like SpongeBob and Patrick, but then when you grow up, it's like you become Squidward, right? And so I think that's definitely my connection to that show, like now, and also I've met many of people who have this sort of materialistic greed, like Mr. Krabs, and I have a very similar, they're in a sushi bar in the sky now, but I had a very similar connection to my cats as SpongeBob did to Gary, and I think that even if it's vague, like groundedness in reality or like humanistic qualities does make me feel part of a community. So
What about now the less not funny show comes from Stephen, the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. What about that draws you to it?
I think probably what drew me to them most on the first time I watched them was, you know, people refer to books as page turners. Like, you always have to see what's happening next. I think the sort of how, like, these horrible situations that the characters get into in those shows, it's like a morbid curiosity, like what's going to happen next. Are they going to get caught? Is someone going to get killed? Are they going to swat the fly? It's always like you just have to know what's happening, even though on some level it's like like they say about watching it, like what was it, like a train crash?
Yeah.
Like you can't look away. It's just,
Like a different kind of attachment.
yeah.
This is a spoiler alert, so if you're listening, too bad. With Better Call Saul at the end, what did you think of what he did?
I think,
And just tell them what it was.
all right, so in the end of Better Call Saul, so Saul Goodman, or Jimmy McGill, he uses a few different names. He gets caught for helping Walter White run his empire in Breaking Bad, and he sort of pulls out his he's kind of a sweet talker, you know. He's but he pulls out all his old kind of tricks to try and lessen his sentence, only get I think a few years in prison, and then he at the last moment basically goes back on it and admits to everything, says he did horrible things, and he goes to jail for I think at least decades.
And why did he do it? Wasn't he protecting somebody?
Yeah, he was protecting Kim.
Yeah, he loved Kim.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, you had, and I think that endears you to him. There was a part of, who watched here? Anyone watch Better Call Saul? Okay.
Who's Kim?
Kim was the lawyer girlfriend.
Okay.
And Saul, or Jimmy McGill, was a very flawed character. And you never know if you liked him or hated him. You never knew what he was. And there were times, especially at the end, you started to really hate him. Because all that, whatever goodness or whatever in him, and whatever damage, his brother did to him and life did to him, you felt bad. But then at the end, when he was becoming this awful anti-hero, suddenly he sacrificed everything for the woman he loved. So what did you think of that ending?
I thought it was, it was interesting. I didn't really expect him to do that, but it sort of felt like more conclusive that way, more like a proper end, like it's finally over, at least for Jimmy. He got his, he's serving his time, and no one else has to suffer because of him, at least anymore.
And I think he maybe feels better about himself that
Yes.
he did something right in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something good. Jesse, you watched the show?
I did. I didn't see the end.
Ah.
It's okay. I'm gonna finish it anyway.
Okay.
I loved, I'm glad you brought up Breaking Bad. I wasn't thinking about that as a comfort show, but I did literally just start rewatching it this last weekend for finals season. So I get the rewatch element because I think this is my third time watching Breaking Bad. And I loved Better Call Saul from what I saw. I don't know how many seasons I got up to, but I got up there almost at the end. And I think as you were talking, what came to my mind is even when we're watching these people in these sort of what feel like very unrealistic situations or things that we don't have in our lives, that human element that you were talking about earlier, it's there. It's there no matter what the scenario is or no matter who the person is. There's still things that we might think to ourselves, yeah, I can relate to that. I don't know what I would really do in that situation. Maybe I would do something that I wouldn't be proud of. Maybe I would do something that's not entirely ethical. And I think that relating even in that way, whether we would do it, whether we wouldn't do it, just observing, I think that curiosity, that human engagement. But I think that going into a little bit of a darker place, I think we might come out feeling better about ourselves. We might come out feeling, questionable about ourselves. But it's engaging something emotional and relational, which I think does feel like the element that we're sort of discussing. Especially when you brought up relational, I felt like that really hit something intrinsic with the rewatching, and also going through a difficult time. And as I think back now, I'm like, oh wait, this is what was happening when I first started this show. And some of them I started when they first ran, some of them I started later on. But this is not what I was thinking of originally, but Anthony Bourdain and all his shows. those got me through like dark times. He was going to foreign lands, he was going to these distant places, having these amazing cultural experiences.
You know, which just reminds me, because during COVID, during the real part of COVID, which was 4 years ago, unbelievable at this point, the show that got me through it was Schitt's Creek. So I forgot about it. And you know, we couldn't go to restaurants, and they went to the, what was it called, the Paradise? Well, I forgot the name of the restaurant they went to that had that insanely big menu. I forgot what it was. But they would go, Cafe Tropicale.
I was gonna
And
I knew it was
they would go to
tropical.
Tropic, and I remember sitting there with my wife going, gee, I would just love to be going to Cafe Tropicale right now, because we haven't been out, we haven't seen our friends and our relatives, we're just stuck in the house, you know, on Zoom. And that gave me a lot of comfort, because we went, and also, I forgot the name of the show, so the guy went to Italy. He's an actor, he went to Italy and traveled through Italy before, right, Stanley Tucci. And he was right before COVID, so it was before it really broke down, and like you felt that you were out of the house. So yeah, it really can bring some comfort when you're in tough times. It really can. Yeah.
Some shows like helped you relate during COVID, like Superstore. Like they had their COVID season, and they were wearing masks and they were distancing themselves. So it was like, wow, like the media is actually catching up with us. Like we can relate to this. And another show that did that with the thrill and curiosity, like Breaking Bad, would be Law and Order, specifically SVU. I love SVU; it's my favorite. But yeah, they related to us. They wore masks, they followed the protocols, and they kind of made it feel like that we weren't so isolated, like it was happening everywhere, not just to us.
That's a great point. Let's go around and see, what was your favorite episodes of your favorite shows? Who wants to start? Go ahead.
We can go down.
All right. Well, with Dairy Girls, it's definitely between two. It's either the episode where.
What's this show about? I don't know
Okay,
about.
so Dairy Girls, it's like a comedy. It follows like a few girls and one guy in Ireland during like the conflicts with like they live in like Londonderry. So then they go to Catholic school, and then the one guy, it's an all girls Catholic school, but he goes there too because he's English, and it's Michelle's cousin, and they were scared that if they put him in the boys' school, they would beat him up because he's English. So he goes to the girls' school with the girls. And so it just like follows their antics. Like they're always just like getting into like the craziest situations. So my two favorite episodes are either the episode where Claire comes out, because like she was just like so iconic in this in the moment, and it was so funny, but it was also like a little bit more serious than some of like the other things that happened in the show. But then the other episode, I love this episode, is when so they go to since the Catholic school, Claire and Michelle, they're freaking out about this test. They start praying, and at the same time, Erin, like, dog died, didn't, air quotes on died, and she sees a dog that looks exactly like her dead dog, and she follows it, and they're in the like church rafters while Michelle and Claire are down here praying to the Mother Mary statue, and the dog pees on the statue. So Claire and Michelle think that Mother Mary is crying. And they're like, we're not taking this test, we just saw an act of God. So then they go to Sister Michael's office, who's the head like nun principal. She's the best, the funniest, love her. And she's like, oh, they bring in a priest. She thinks they're lying because, well, they don't think that Erin knows that they're lying. Well, she knows because she saw it, but she didn't tell them because she's so like shocked, and she doesn't want to say that the dog peed on the Mother Mary statue. And like they bring in like this priest. So then Erin was like, this is wrong. I'm gonna tell, like, I can't keep doing this. But then she like really loves the priest. It's like a really hot priest, and he goes off like at the end with some hairdresser or something. And so she like keeps up the lie, but then the mom's like, you need, like, knows that they're lying too, like she has a feeling, but like they're still holding strong. And then she's like, okay, like I have to, like, they dig up the dead dog in the yard to prove that, like, and there was no dog in there. So Erin was like,
Another miracle.
But what happened was the mom gave the dog away or something. And like at the end, she like, Aaron like, he's like talking, the priest is talking about how like he's in love with this person, and Aaron thinks it's her. It's not, it's the slutty hairdresser as they were called, as they refer to her as. And then like the whole thing just falls apart, and the priest goes off with the hairdresser. He comes back in the next season, not with the hairdresser, and he's like, I'm a priest again. And it's the best episode, because I just love that the dog, like, they think,
All because of the
it's
dog.
so funny.
That's not your, what, The Office, or which one?
I would definitely go with The Office, and if I'm gonna say two favorite episodes, the first, I'm a big Jim and Pam fan. They're not perfect, but I love them. When they get married and Niagara, and Pam tears her veil, and she's like, I'm pregnant, this isn't what I envisioned. And when he cuts his tie, I get teary every time, because it's like, when true empathy is to be with a person in a moment. And he literally becomes with her in that moment. Like, we're both gonna be a little imperfect walking down this aisle together. And I just think that, you know, it's a little silly and it's sweet, but there's some truth to the love that's there, that this is not what really matters. Like, how we look walking down into this moment isn't what matters. And so I love that that feels like very true in relation to like really loving a person and being with them. And the second, Pam. Pam is my girl, and I didn't realize how much she was my girl until the very end. I know a lot of people don't like the final season. I loved the whole show. When she gives a speech at the end, and she says, you know, she looked back at her life and she saw how long she spent being less happy than she could be. And if somebody was inspired by that, it would just make her heart soar. And I related to that on a very deep level, because I did spend a lot of my life less happy than I could be. And that's always what you want when you've gone through those hard times, especially if you're able to look back, and she gets to literally look back and view it since it's a documentary. But she has no bitterness, she doesn't have any pity. She just recognizes, like, that was not ideal, and if anybody can learn from what I've gone through, then I hope that they will. And I really relate to that deeply, and it's so inspiring. I get teary every time I see her say that speech, and it really is the most, I feel, represented in that show.
That was a great one.
I also really like the wedding episode. That's my favorite, especially with the song that they did as the prank down the aisle. It always gets me. I always cry. And if you haven't watched The Office, you just have to get through the first season. It's great, I promise. But yeah, that last episode too, it always gets me. And it's just, I don't think I can pick exactly one episode, but the wedding would definitely be up top. But the whole show, I just love everything that they did.
Well, talking about The Office, funny, because neither one of you went for the funniest ones. You went for the most emotional ones. I thought Andy's speech, I love Pam's speeches. Pam's speech was brilliant, and when she talked about mundane, that was great about the picture. They really tied that in to the whole thing. It's wonderfully done. But Andy's speech was
The
fantastic.
good old days.
To know that you're in the good old days.
Yeah.
To recognize, to live in the moment. That was really good. But getting off the emotional, to me, the dinner party, the dinner party is so cringy. It's so hard to sit through and so wonderful. It's so fun. I can watch that. And a lot of the stuff was improvised. And my favorite thing when he goes, you're the devil, you're the devil. And she puts the devil back. She goes like that with the horns on her head.
Episode of it?
Was that?
The Superfan episode of it,
Yeah.
where she spray painted the dog.
He gets on the little bed.
Oh my god.
Oh, when she walks in, there's a camera facing the bed. I mean, it's just one thing, and her candles, and there's one thing after another that is unbelievable. But I was in the, if you listen to the podcast or read the books on it, the scene with the TV, they had to film dozens of times because they could not make it through.
The plasma screen.
The plasma screen that moves, it's a 2-inch plasma screen, and it moves an inch away from the wall. It's the most pathetic thing you've ever seen. They actually had to take them out They're actually filming in a condo.
Okay.
They found it wasn't a set, it was a condo. They had to leave, they had to go outside, they had to walk around, they had to breathe, because they couldn't get through that scene.
That was the hardest episode in general for them to record.
Yeah, because it was so tight.
So
Yeah.
funny.
So that one's great, and I love the deposition, I think that's wonderful. So.
That's amazing. That's good.
When they read back, that's what she said. Do you work under her? Because that's what she said. And you have these lawyers sitting around, what? Read that back.
Show
What?
that on the record. That's what she said. That's a super fan episode of him putting panty liners under his armpits so he couldn't sweat through them.
That to me is the biggest laugh. So I just love that. Not biggest laugh to Breaking Bad, but what would be your favorite episode of either Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul?
Yeah, so I think Breaking Bad would have to be my favorite, just consistently. Like, it felt more like Better Call Saul probably had better high points for me, like the scene with Mike and the cops, Nacho's scene in season 6, and the scene in the super lab when it's being built at the end. But Breaking Bad, I think its last episode is just too good to be surpassed. So in the first episode of Breaking Bad, Walter White has his pancakes with, it's his 50th birthday, he has his pancakes with 50 spelled out in veggie bacon. He's not too thrilled about being veggie bacon, but in the final episode of the show, he has his 52nd birthday, same deal, but it's real bacon, but he doesn't need it. He's not there for the pancakes, he's there to buy a car rigged with an automatic rifle that he uses at the end. And then he goes to see his wife, and he admits to her, poor woman, she had to put up with all the criminal acts he's done throughout the show, sort of being forced to help him. And he admits to her that he was doing it all for himself. He, ruined her life, his family's life, all for his own sense of pride and self-worth. And then towards the end of the episode, he goes to this house where this neo-Nazi group is staying, the one that he used to work with, and they ended up basically kidnapping Jesse Pinkman and forcing him to work for them. And he acts like he's tackling Jesse, and he's pushing him to the ground. Then he activates the car and shoots and kills all of the guys who kidnapped him. So he basically went there to save him, as maybe to atone for him ruining his life as well. And but their leader, his name is Jack, I think, he survives, and he's trying to tell Walter that he has some of his money still, and he'll tell him where it is if he lives, and he cuts him off and shoots him. Like, sort of at that point, I don't think he cares about the money anymore. He's just sort of done. He's trying to sort of wrap things up. And I forgot, there's a scene where he sort of pretends to hire assassins to force contacts to give his kids some money, sort of so that I guess the government doesn't take it. But he saves Jesse, lets him go.
It's similar in Breaking Bad, because at the end, there's self-sacrifice
Yeah.
of the bad guy
Yeah.
who
It's,
saves somebody else.
mm-hmm.
Interesting. Until you said that, I didn't see the parallel.
Yeah, it's a good point. It sort of both shows the main causer of trouble for everyone else kind of doesn't really, like, they could never undo everything they did, but they, like, long after it was too late, they kind of came back and tried to set some things right.
Yeah. The one scene in Breaking Bad always stays in my mind, and I don't know why I had affection for Mike, because Mike is a terrible person, but maybe because of his relationship with his granddaughter, and there's a soft side to him that you like. When Mike was on the bench, and they killed Mike, it was filmed beautifully, and that he was alone. He was an old man. He didn't have that same power, and Walter killed him. Right? It was Walter
Yeah.
killed him, and that was awful. It was just an awful scene, and that just sticks out in my mind.
because he just told him that he had a big head, and he kind of proved him right, yes.
Yeah. And how about, we'll go from getting murdered
To
to
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
Okay.
Okay, so what is-
So I measure my favorite episodes of like Golden Era SpongeBob through like how many memes they produced. So, okay, so also too, like I think another part of it is that me and my brother and I have, we relate on very few things. He's all like, I don't know, into like sports and like, I don't know, he's like 25 and like I'm a man and whatever, and it's just like we don't like see eye to eye on a ton of things, but the one thing that we share is SpongeBob. Like we both have the same exact SpongeBob poster in our rooms, which is mildly embarrassing, but anyways, the two episodes that we quote to each other all the time, like literally makes up 95% of our communication, are Band Geeks, which is the infamous "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" that
The
episode.
Super Bowl, the halftime one.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And then Pizza Delivery, which is the infamous Krusty Krab, that episode. And so those two for sure. Just like with quick respect to Drag Race, I actually have a similar episode to you, and I am going for the cringiest episode of the series because Drag Race is like, since it's like a reality TV competition show, it's like there are a lot of like vulnerable moments with the queens that are definitely like relatable to me as a queer person and whatever, but my favorite episode is from season 7, the Shakespeare episode, because basically they were split up into 2 teams, and they the challenge, it was an acting challenge, and they had it was based on like 2 Shakespeare plays. The one group was Romeo and Juliet, and the other one was McB-word, and so. But it was so bad that it was amazing. Like they all, like none of them even knew like who Shakespeare was practically, especially Pearl. And like it was just like really funny. They like don't know like, and none of them know their lines. All of them are just like trying to like remember their lines. And RuPaul was like, "What the." Am I watching like this like a car crash like whatever, and I think this is like super funny to like rewatch.
Yes, I'm asking you, Savannah, what do you think of Scott's Tots?
Oh my god.
Because
I love how they added Stanley reading the newspaper for it and him just dying. I think he's the highlight of it. Scott's Tots. I don't know. It's
because it's
definitely
very
up there.
controversial. People either hate it or
Really? People hate it?
Hate it.
I
Yeah.
never heard people hating Scott's
Because when I was
Tots.
listening to the Office Ladies, they said that is the least liked one, that people skip it when they
Really?
rewatch a lot.
I will always watch Scott's Tots. I never skip an episode of The Office.
Does everyone here know what that is? Okay, just real summary of it. Michael Scott, when he's young and thinks he's
It was
going
like,
to make a lot of money in
10
his
years
life.
ago or
Right,
something?
10
Yeah.
years ago, goes into a grade school class in a underprivileged area and promises these kids that if they get good grades, he's going to pay for their college educations. And he meant it. He did. He meant it at the
He
time.
thought he'd be like a millionaire.
Right, but now they're ready to graduate, and he's got nothing. And he has to face them. And he has to go to the school, and when he goes into the class, they have this beautiful dance number.
They like dedicated the library to him.
And he has to face them. And it's, oh God, it's hard to watch.
Yeah.
You
I don't
know,
like watching it.
You don't like
Really? No, like the first time I watched it, I was sitting there just like, what is going on?
I heard
Like,
some people don't like watching The Office because of how awkward it is.
Oh, no,
like they
I
feel
lo-
awkward themselves.
I love The Office,
But
but,
that's
like
so
that
awkward.
episode is
That's
horrendous.
rough.
Like
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there like, no, like I have to turn it off. Like I have to go through it. No.
So you don't like the episode?
No, it's
Oh,
so
okay, okay.
painful.
So now we know. He gets some lithium batteries instead of a tuition.
Because that is They thought they were getting leased computers to get some batteries. So then he went to, one guy follows him on the street, and he goes to write him a check for like $100 for his school books, but he says, don't cash. So last week, do you like it, Justin? No.
Oh, I love Scott's Tots, and I do think it's awkward, but I think many of my favorite moments in The Office are awkward, and maybe it's just me, and I don't think I am like Michael Scott, but I've certainly had my internally intensely awkward, cringy moments where, you know, you think back still way after about like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said or did this or that or whatever it is. And I don't know, that awkwardness, I feel like that's not very well represented, I don't feel, especially on television, especially in a way that I feel it on a like visceral level. And I think that part feels real, right? The ridiculous scenarios that they display are not totally like what like corporate life is like, but they're sort of representative of what it's like. But the awkwardness, that's probably one of the first things I remember sharing with somebody, like, he's so awkward and I relate to that. And they looked at me like I was nuts, but it's true. Like, that's a real part of life. And I've never made that kind of promise, but I've stuck my foot in my mouth before. I have made promises I didn't have businesses keeping. Like,
So if you didn't like Scott's Tots, which is okay, but
whatever.
sorry. Is there any other episode that you just can't watch because it's too awkward?
No, it's that.
It's
one.
just that
that
one.
one's like
That is-
so bad.
I never
Like,
heard of that. Like I
it's
never knew that was such a controversial.
really,
yeah.
like-
Yeah, people just
I
don't
don't know,
like.
oh, those poor people. Like, I know it's fake,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
that's true. You just
it's
feel
one
bad
thing when
for
it's
them.
like one person, but it's like
a whole
those children, like their whole futures, like different. That sucks. Oh my god, it's bad.
Yeah.
Painfully bad.
But at the end, when Aaron is saying to him, like, how many kids succeeded and stuck through and didn't drop out,
Yeah.
I think that for me, it shows that like life is just not black and white. Even in our mistakes, sometimes good things do come from it. And obviously even in our good choices, sometimes bad things come from it. And again, I feel like there's a thread of truth in that. And obviously, no, it's horrendous to promise something so extravagant and then to not do it for young, hopeful children in need. I mean, there's no doubting that. But the fact that that's all, like, there's lessons in it for me. Like, that's all it takes is the promise of something that can keep a person going. So let's not promise things we can't give, but how do we, I feel inspired. Like, how do you recreate that in a more fair, ethical, like, appropriate way? Because clearly there's something to.
Yeah, but in a non-Michael Scott kind of way.
No.
Sheldon, how about you? What do you like about Suits?
I'm not sure I could name one thing.
What do you like about it in general?
It goes with your major.
Honestly, I don't know why I clung on to it. I think it was just the cliffhanger just kept me going.
That's something about cliffhangers also that keep you going. There was one show I binge watched which I really hated at the end, was Lost. Because anyone watch Lost here? Lost was an amazing show. And it just built and built, and you're talking about cliffhangers, Steve. It built and built, and then it just left you on top of the cliff. It didn't give you anything.
Oh.
It was, they had all these things that you try to solve, and they never solved any of it. And it was really, I could never watch that show again.
I do hate that. That's like one thing about shows, like when you've been watching them for so long and then like it just gets bad. It makes me so angry.
Well, some people feel about that with The Office.
Well,
you know?
yeah, that's
Some
true.
people feel like after Michael Scott left that the show was ruined.
Robert California, listen, I love him. I hate Robert California.
I do too.
Whenever he came on, it just, and the worst show ever was the pool party, was the worst of
He
it.
is the most uncomfortable
Ugh,
character.
but not in a fun way. He's uncomfortable because he's just
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Oh, and Will Ferrell, who do you play?
That didn't
D'Angelo.
work either. That
Yeah,
didn't work.
no.
That's why I'm glad they got rid of
I
him.
still think that after Michael Scott left, it was a great show.
It wasn't the same. I agree.
It wasn't the same,
It
but
wasn't.
it's
liked it.
still.
That's not like, I think for me, like two shows that like come to mind, Flash got really, really bad. So I stopped
Did the
watching
Flash
it.
leave or something?
No, it just, the show got bad.
Oh, okay. Just got I thought someone, okay.
It
It
just
got
got
slower.
garbage. It became garbage. And also, The Practice, the last season of The Practice, the main actor leaves. Like, and then they just keep trying to like keep going. Like the other guy takes over The Practice. I'm like, no, this is bad. Stop, please. You should have ended when he was leaving. You should have just called it quits. Because then they only kept it on for one season anyway after, and they ended it. You should have ended it right there and then.
Well, they have it in Scrubs, because when Scrubs had a great ending. For those of you who don't watch it, you really should. That ending was one of the best endings. Have you seen it? It's just, it's a brilliant thing. It's in a hospital and they're doing painting on the outside, so it's a big sheet. But what they do is they present life as he went through it and life in the future. It's a brilliant ending to the show, and it should have ended. But they came back with season 9, which most of the regulars were gone, and they tried to make it work, and it was just it's horror. It's an insult, and it really ruins the memory. That's why Seinfeld, the last one wasn't so good. The last season of Seinfeld was great. And I think the final show with The Office, I love the final. I think
I
that
think
was
so
wonderful.
too. We got rid of the uncomfortable people. Nellie's still there, but like she's not bad. But yeah, I think it's a good last season.
Getting back to Breaking Bad, I think that is where part of the desire to rewatch it comes for me. Breaking Bad, of all the shows I've ever seen, was the most effective, and there are no loose ends, there are no plot holes. I've never seen a story so well, a complicated story in terms of like just logistically what's happening and who's doing what, a complicated story emotionally, and I've never honestly seen anything before or since that I would put at that level of just excellent storytelling. And there's something very satisfying about that, which it sounds like, we've all had moments of not being totally satisfied even by our favorite shows, but Breaking Bad, he did that so well. It's easy to go back to it.
Well, we're running a little bit out of time, but I do have a question. We just named a lot of different varieties of shows, and we possibly have movies and books in mind. Is this something that we do to relieve our stress? Especially during final season, we're kind of going through the weeds right now. Is there other things that we do to relieve stress, or is this our main routine?
I read a lot, or like I think like shows and like books, and I classify them as different like things. Like I'm watching like shows a lot of the time while I'm like doing things, but like my book is like my unwind time because you can't multitask while you're reading. Like I sit down and I read my book. I read a lot at night. Like my poor roommate, I keep like the light on and but so I sit there and I read, and it's like a nice unwind of my day. I think compared to like shows where it's kind of like keeps me like locked in on what I'm doing. So
Yeah, you can disappear on through a
yeah, escapism.
I'd have to second that. I usually more listen to shows as like a form of stimulation while I'm doing something else, because I can't focus on one thing without having like some sort of audio. So when I watch Suits, it was more like a podcast.
Yeah.
You don't really have to. You don't really have to watch the screen.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like good.
I mean, I love reading, but as time has gone on, especially as my academic career has gone on, it's been harder and harder to do it for pleasure. And I probably should try for the very reason you're bringing up, that like you really can't do anything else and you get lost in it, like you said. But I think that's why certain shows draw me in a little bit more fully, because they replicate reading in a subtle way. But shows are my go-to at this stage of my life. It's easy, it's comforting, even if it's a new show. There's something that like reading takes more effort, and that's good, but I feel like I don't have much more effort to give.
I totally agree. Like classes, I'm reading constantly. Every week there's like 5 to 10 new readings you gotta do. I just wanna sit down and watch a show and watch other people deal with other things and have a laugh or a cry at it.
I definitely agree with the whole like reading is more effort thing, but actually right now this combines earlier when I said Full House is one of my favorite shows and reading, because I'm currently reading John Stamos' memoir. Currently, I think the year is like, what, 1984, something, like right before like Full House started in 87, but he's like on General Hospital. And he's still like, you know, fine as wine. And so anyways, but yeah, I guess like, I'm like more of a recreational reader. Like I'm not like super into it, but like once in a while I'll be like, this seems like a nice little thing to like immerse myself in, but I'm not like a super like routine reader.
I feel like if I read, it's more like reading news, reading like that sort of thing. I think that's the type of thing that almost shouldn't relieve stress, but even that kind of does. Like it's almost like, you know, it feels like if something bad is happening, like if like there's a government decision or a recent development that's like a bad thing, it's almost like, well, at least you know what it is, you know, like it's almost better to be informed of even bad things than to not know, at least in my opinion. I'm sure there are people who feel otherwise.
You like worrying about other things instead of like yourself and what you have to do, kind
Honestly, I'm not really one to worry. Like I can read about those type of things and just go about my day, you know.
Okay, it just like
doesn't-
focus on something
yeah.
else. Oh, okay.
I'll just, when we talk about disappearing into books, you really should read Stephen King. Because what I like to do is I read a Stephen King book, then I read a history book. Stephen King book, a history book. I like to, between, and some of his work, and he doesn't get enough credit, the way he writes dialogue and the way he writes people, you feel you're inside the book. It's a really unique talent, and storytelling is wonderful too, but it's just his ability to create, I call it the movie in your mind. A well-written book is you don't even know you're reading anymore. It's you get into that Zen kind of, it's really a
You
weird.
like get that picture in your head
Right.
of the characters.
It's really weird. You know, you feel you're not reading. You're there, experiencing the story. And he's really good at that. Really, really good. So I'd recommend that to anyone, especially over the summer. There's a list of them you could read. Come to me if you want it. I'm not going to bore everyone with it. And one last thing I want to mention, The Godfather. That's another movie you can watch.
What's your number one
Number
book
one movie?
from Stephen King?
So yeah, you got to watch The Godfather, of course.
What's your number one book?
Number one book by Stephen King. I would say scariest was probably It. It was really scary and extremely well written. So I would go with that. His latest fantasy book was also fantastic. I'm forgetting, I think it's called Fairy Tale, but that was also wonderful. But anything you pick up of this is good. So,
All right.
any last questions, Savannah?
Well, I'm all out of questions. Are you? Good?
I think
You're all
we've
good?
covered a lot of good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming in and talking about our favorite comfort shows, movies, books, and any other relievers that help us get through stressful times. It's so important for us to talk about this. We can change society's normal by talking about our stressors and coming together to share our routines for relieving our anxieties. Thank you to Professor Lane for hosting with me. And again, we post our roundtables on our YouTube and SoundCloud, and we are broadcasted on the first and third Sundays of each month from 8 to 9 a.m. on G-Town Radio 92.5 FM WGGT. Thanks for listening and have a great day.